I can see we've got people starting to join us. So thanks so much for attending today this Go One webinar. We'll get started in a minute or so to let a few more people join. Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today. We were just going to give it another minute or so to let a few more people join, but we'll be kicking off really shortly. Thanks so much. Well, it's 2 minutes past now, so I think we'll get started. So I will hand over to our host and moderator today, George.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Kelly, and lovely to have you all joining us today. We're really excited to have you here. My name is George Ellison Bunce, and I'm an Enterprise Customer Success Manager at Go One. Kelly, do you want to just click us onto the next slide, please? Amazing. So at Go One, we are the world's leading digital content expert, and we aim to unlock the power of human potential through a love of learning. And that means helping people just like you understand how to choose a learning management system, or LMS, or LXP, or kind of similar acronym for your organization. The right learning platform can be the difference between boosting your ROI and attracting top talent, or losing leading employees to your competitors. Research has found that 72% of organizations gain a competitive advantage when they implement such a platform. Thanks, Kelly. Next slide, please. And that is why we have created an amazing resource or ebook called The Ultimate Guide to Choosing the Right Learning Platform for Your Business. This outlines everything you need to know about how to transform learning at your organization. You can download the ebook from the QR code on the screen currently, which we'll make available afterwards. And it's packed with tips to simplify the process of choosing an LMS. Whether you're a CEO, HR manager, or learning and development leader and unsure where to start, how to go about researching and need help navigating each step along the way, or whether you want to understand how to maximize, use, or even upgrade your existing LMS, this guide really is for you. And it's also why we've assembled a fantastic cast today to give you some first-hand experience and insight into the process. I'll be asking them lots of questions to get all the tips, tricks, and hurdles that they've used to navigate the purchasing decision and how they found the implementation process and beyond. So firstly, I'll hand over to Kelly Jenkins, Director of Alliances at Go One, to introduce herself.
Thanks so much, George. Yes, hi everyone. As George mentioned, I head up the alliances for EMEA here, which means I work with some of our key strategic partners in the LMS, LXP, insert learning acronym here, world. So hopefully quite well positioned to give a holistic overview as to what we're hearing from customers that are looking for platforms such as these. I've been with Go1 for a couple of years now and had the privilege of working in a few different departments, so hopefully it can be quite helpful in terms of everything Go1 also.
Amazing. Thanks very much, Kelly. We're also joined today by Ali Monaco, Senior L&D Partner at Oliver Agency. Ali, do you want to pop off mute and say hi?
Yeah, hi everyone. Good afternoon. Lovely to be here. Hope you're all well.
Thank you very much, Ali. And Seb, handing over to yourself.
Thanks, George. Yeah, so hi everyone. My name's Seb. I'm currently the Strategic Enablement Director at Vitality. Before that, I've worked in various financial institutions, including Santander and cooperative banks. So hopefully, looking to share some of that experience today, and you can learn from some of my mistakes.
Thanks very much, Seb.
I should have said where I was from. I just wanted to say hello to everybody. So Seb was...
I thought it was a power move. It's like, I don't need an introduction. I didn't know who I am.
It wasn't. I should point out, I'm the one in the middle on that screen there, in case I don't look like my photo. So yes, hi everyone. My name is Ali Monaco, and I'm a Senior L&D Partner at Oliver Agency. I'll give you context as to why I'm here. About 18 months ago, we implemented a new LMS, and I work with various systems in the past. So hopefully I'll be able to give you some insight into how the whole experience was for me in our company. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ali. Awesome. Thanks, Kelly. So we'll just kind of run through an overview of today's session. So for the central part of today's webinar, we'll be asking our panel a bunch of questions about how they navigated their journey to procuring an LMS or LXP, or as we said, insert learning and development acronym there, what the process, challenges and experience look like for them, and we'll obviously look to dedicate some time either at the end or throughout to answer any questions that have been put in the chat throughout. So please do feel free to drop any in there as we go along. If we can, I'll definitely come to those and pose them to the panel at the time, or if we want to collect some at the end and speak through those there, then we can absolutely do that. So let's get started and dive in. Thanks, Kelly. So to kick off the panel discussion, I want to hopefully start with one of the easier questions for today's session, which is just looking at why learning is a business priority, or was it at the time for you and the organization that you work for? So obviously either Oliver or Vitality. So Ali, do you want to kick us off with this one?
Yeah, lovely. Thank you. One of our company values is learning. So kind of, you have to put your money where your mouth is, right? So in order for us to reasonably encourage everybody to learn, the system, the offering that we give them needs to be robust, it needs to be developed, but it also needs to be strategic and relevant to them. So with the learning value being so prominent for us, we did in the last 3 years have an extreme period of growth, which happily we're still in at the moment. And the number of employees rose by 2,000 to where we're currently sitting at 4,000, and we are global. So we needed an LMS that could deal with specific content for different regions, but also to be able to target individual audiences and cover a huge variety of topics. We work with all different clients and their needs are great. So we needed to be able to, yes, attract people initially, but then also retain them. It's a huge thing, learning and development, isn't it, in your offering, to be able to say, come and join us. Yes, we want you, but yes, we will nurture you. We will allow you and assist you and support you with getting better. I also think that for us, we needed to react and train people incredibly quickly to deal with the client's needs. Okay, so one of my favorite words that we love at our company, pivot. We need to pivot, right? So we needed a platform and a content provider in order to be able to instantly react to a request that came in. And also we need to be able to keep ahead of the curve. For us, I'm sure I'll mention it more than once today, AI for our industry, where we're a creative marketing company, is huge. We need to be cutting edge, and we need to know that we're getting the right training, learning, development to the right people. And then finally, I think a big prompt for us was that accountability through statistics. We are lucky because we fought to prove that LND is essential, not just a nice to have, but you do need in a real world to be able to back that up with stats. And when it comes to things like the more serious end of the scale, like compliance and legal matters as well, that accountability, we needed a robust system that was easy to pull the stats and see where we're at any given time. So that's the kind of situation we were in as a company, that made us reach out to replace our old system, out with the old, in with the new, with a big upgrade.
Amazing. Thanks very much, Ali. I love the kind of contrasting focuses there between the kind of learner focused, ensuring that they have the right kind of access to content to attract them to the role, but also retain them. And then also from your perspective around how you can kind of showcase the value that you're kind of driving to your relevant stakeholders as well.
So when people move roles, we have to be able to support them with the new learnings that they need for that flexibility as well. So yeah, it's a big one, that the retaining, awesome. Supporting people.
Seb, how much of what Ali's just mentioned there kind of resonates with yourself and your journey of Vitality?
Yes, some, I think, you know, that this is the beauty of this job. I think the views vary. I think in terms of ourselves, learning isn't a business priority, performance is. So I think when we're looking at a system to deploy, it has to be linked to what the organization is trying to achieve. And I think when you look at some of the pressures that a lot of organizations are under, driving cost bases, so people need to be more effective in different arenas, dispersed workforce, you know, people are working hybrid, people are working absolutely everywhere, increasing requirements to, as Ali says, kind of pivot to different requirements as organizations are trying to struggle in the kind of economy and do different things. And we're also seeing increased innovation in kind of products. So the requirement is for businesses is to move incredibly quickly to be able to gain efficiencies in order to compete in the market. That for me is the hook around having a compelling digital proposition. It's more around multi-skilling and effectiveness than it is about the kind of warm and fuzzy. Yes, it's not to discount that, and absolutely that's important, but it should be underpinned by saying, well, what does our business want to achieve, and here's how that purchase will support that.
Amazing. I suppose that leads us really nicely on to the next piece that I want to kind of run through today, which is more around setting goals, really. So obviously when setting out on your LMS LXP buying journey, a really simple but important question to ask yourself is why. So like, what do you hope to achieve by purchasing such a system? And the answer to that question should inform every subsequent decision that is made throughout that process. Kelly, in your role within Go1, like you work with a ton of different organizations as they research the need for an LMS or LXP. So what are some of the main goals that you've seen behind the decision to introduce an LMS within organizations that you're working with?
Yeah, thank you. I think I'm in the fortuitous position to be working alongside, you know, some of our partners who are large technology companies and offer a wide range of tech stack. And a lot of what I'm going to touch on, probably in answer to your question, George, which is a great question, is tying into what Ali and Seb have just offered up there as well, because typically what I'm seeing is this need for centralization, and with that comes the adoption of tech stack being obviously a primary driver of that from a cost effective and efficiency perspective, as Seb touched on, but also efficiencies more broadly across the business. The ability to scale as well. So if you're looking at like the ebb and flow of the current economic situation that we find ourselves in as well, that consolidation of tech stack and the ability to grow and sadly sometimes not grow, as the case may be for some organizations, but the ability then to be able to kind of reformulate and come back to a base position in due course is really important. And having the right tech stack will allow the flexibility for the business to sort of breathe in that way, which we're finding is really important at this stage. And then, of course, it's the accessibility of, if we're looking at learning more specifically, accessibility of learning content. You know, we've gone through quite a journey with COVID in terms of remote working, then back to hybrid working. And there's a lot in the news at the moment about, you know, will hybrid stay? Will there be a return to the office, etc.? And I think, you know, to be confirmed. But in any event, you need to be able to provide a system that provides easy access to learning materials, is engaging, and ideally follows a central theme. So in that sense comes back to that centralization of tech stack, so you're being able to drive adoption through the same vehicle over and over again for your learners.
Awesome, thanks very much. I suppose if we can move on to the next theme, which is all around getting stakeholder buy-in. So buying a learning platform, as Kelly's just alluded to, and as we heard from Ali and Seb earlier, like it has a far-reaching impact on everyone within the organization. So end learners all the way up to C-suite. So engaging stakeholders early in that purchasing process is and can be very important to secure not only buy-in, but ensure that everyone is on the same page. Ali, given that you've really recently, I suppose, kind of gone through this process, like what are your key tips for engaging stakeholders at potentially different levels of the organization, and what process did you undertake to engage them, and was that process different depending on, you know, the level of seniority, I suppose?
Yeah, it absolutely was. Yes, I think for me the main collection of stakeholders at the point of when we were choosing a platform were obviously finance, people with the purse strings, but also systems. We needed an LMS that spoke to our current system. That was a sort of an essential, and also the compliance department as well, because we were looking to integrate all. So big significant departments within the business, none of which had anything to do with learning and development. So it is a difficult concept, really. But I think sharing the extent of the platform's capabilities was the most important thing, because I don't think the various other departments expected one platform to be able to do so much for us. And, you know, if you take away L&D's agenda, you have got everything that compliance department needs to facilitate its job. You have got, you know, the connection with our people, the systems you know, for us as well. So I think beyond that, it's a cultural buy-in. I suppose I was lucky in that I could always refer back to, look, learning is a value. And I think you do need upfront to get the company to agree to that and remind them, why are we doing it? It is important for all these reasons, because it can suddenly then turn into, well, how much is it? Do we really need it? Of course, if you're lucky enough to have a big company, you can talk about a value per head. That was important for me as well. Look, this one investment per head ends up being, you know, really reasonable given the extent of content. So I think it's that cultural buy-in from everybody as well at the start. And I think also I focused on the fact that we were offering not just career progression for everybody through the content, but also kind of well-being support. If I go back to the attract and retain, we want as employees now to be considered as a whole person. And that means, you know, the support of learning, of dealing with productivity, of wellness in the workplace. And I think hosting all that through one platform, it suddenly becomes a much more attractive offering. So those were kind of the highlights of the difficult, the difficulties that I faced, and then that that immersive, we're touching the whole person here. It's an offering for everybody at work and at home as well, with a well-being vibe behind it too. I think.
Yeah, I love that message.
Yeah.
I think coming back to that, Ali, I know that those are some of the challenges that you face. Like, given, I suppose you've probably reflected quite a lot on that journey relatively recently, and I'm sure we've got a number of people in the session today who are maybe going through that now or are thinking about kind of going through that journey. So what, if you had your time again, somewhat of a somber phrase, but what would you do differently, if anything, during that process?
I think I would have fought harder to get the senior stakeholders to see the platform in action. The L&D team turn up to see it work. We get wowed. We, oh gosh, I'm really excited, and it does this, that, and the other. I would have loved to have had my senior stakeholders, which can be difficult to do, but I would have insisted that they come, because I think if it had fired up their imagination about the extent of what the platform could do, it would, have taken away from just a focus on the purse strings. Now, of course, the purse strings are incredibly important, but having that, seeing it before your own eyes, which is the real, magical moment where you imagine your company brand on that, I would have fought for that more.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I suppose that leads us quite nicely onto the next point, actually, which is kind of getting people to understand what they need and maybe what's available, and then really defining what it is that you might be looking for during this process. Kelly, if you're able to go to the next slide, that would be really helpful. Amazing. So on this slide, what we really want to kind of focus in on is defining what the organization needs. And research by Capterra has found that functionality, reliability, support, and price, hence their feature on the slide, are the most important factors that influence learning platform purchasing decisions. Other factors, though not so popular, include the ability to integrate with other systems, which Ali just mentioned, mobile capabilities, which we haven't actually discussed yet today, reporting and analytics, and then social and learning and ease of use fundamentally. So Kelly, again, kind of coming back to your role within the partner space within Go1, what are the key features that people are generally looking for when they're choosing a learning platform, be that an LMS or an LXP?
Yeah, thank you. On the mobile piece as well, I am interested. What's the uptake like of mobile learning nowadays? Do we find that people are still using, I'm saying still because I'm going to put that in inverted commas, using their mobile phones to access learning materials? Because there was huge buzz over it, wasn't there? Like mobile first, mobile compatible, etc. And I know for some organizations it's really necessary where they don't necessarily have access to a desktop computer. But typically, is that something like Seb, Ali, is that something you see in your organizations frequently, a sort of mobile first attitude or mobile at all attitude?
I think you're right. It's antiquated. I think mobile functionality has unfortunately been lumbered in with flexibility, like perceived flexibility. We see a lot of people who don't have the time capacity or inclination to complete that learning during the 9 to 5. And absolutely, the ability to be able to support asynchronous learning is a key piece of functionality. So I would agree with you. I think it's less about mobile enablement and more around flexibility for people to learn as and when they need to.
From my point of view, the previous company that I worked for, I would say 99% of them were mobile users. That was the culture. Everything was through the mobile. But where I work now at Oliver, it's the exact opposite. And we access it, we kind of train everybody to access it through our one true source, like a one login, so that's a constant stream of navigation to it. So I've experienced both. And I think the key element is it doesn't matter where you're accessing it, but I think it does need to feel bite-sizey, like the mobile social media-y kind of magazine-y type vibe. In my opinion, that's what gets the interaction and what makes it not feel like a traditional like compliance platform, or you know what I mean, a more clinical platform, if you like.
Yeah, just on that, I think there's a couple of things that mobile functionality will give you. Number one is push functionality, which people sometimes love, and then read rate functionality, so you can see who the recipients of the message. And probably for the last 5 years now, WhatsApp's been in the top 10 platforms for learning, if you consider it as such. So I think to Ali's point, whether you use it on a mobile, whether you use WhatsApp on your desktop, increasingly people are wanting that functionality to be able to get quick messages to individuals. So mobile, again, is a bit of a misnomer, like you say, but that mobile functionality still is ubiquitous.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you both. Sorry, but we're slightly off piece there, but just thought it was an interesting topic to bring up. George, back to your question. Sorry. So you asked me about the main goal behind the decision to introduce an LMS, right? And I think, without wanting to kind of repeat some of the things that we've already spoken about, one of the things that I'm seeing quite a lot of in terms of functionality, which obviously is there and prominent on the screen, is the I'm being asked a lot about generative AI. So platforms that have generative AI baked into the system, to what extent, what is the actual functionality of that generative AI, how is it used, how is it leveraged specifically in relation to skills, and that now is possibly the first question that I get asked now in relation to platform functionality. And I think embracing a platform where you've got a skills first approach is to managing learning, but learning and talent as well, which is really important, is moved away from being a nice to have to an absolute must have now for a lot of organizations. So that's one of the things that I'm certainly getting asked about. And then of course the enabling that for integration with other systems, etc., within the organization.
Awesome. Yeah, I can definitely echo a number of clients looking for content on generative AI or kind of suggestions or queries just more broadly around generative AI. Seb, how about yourself? When you were researching learning platforms and other platforms, I know that we've spoken a little bit, not necessarily about learning platforms, but more around AI recently. Like, what's kind of been on your wish list around learning platforms, and what's been a must-have for you during that process?
A lot of good stuff mentioned. I think the integration piece, I don't think can be understated. I think when a business goes through a bit of maturity, they purchase systems, and they've got a need here, so we're going to purchase that need here. But very little goes into thinking about the desired architecture that sits within the organization. And I can imagine now a lot of people who are either looking to buy an LMS or an XP for the first time probably have a HR system in place. Absolutely, the system owners of that HR system have to be part of your process, because you're trying to get one source of people data, and there's a real hunger now for well articulated kind of almost people science, like what is the behavior of our people telling us, what are the preemptive indicators we can see about our people to head off factors like attrition, well-being, lack of development opportunities. If that's a requirement for us to be able to produce that insight for senior stakeholders, and it is for me and many of my colleagues, then absolutely you need a single source of truth for systems integration. So I think that absolutely number one. Number two is a caveat: integrations cost money. So you have to factor that into your business case up front to make sure that you're not just quoting cost on system. You've got to make sure you're quoting cost for integration, that you have the IT resource to be able to deploy that within the timescales, and that you have a bit of a roadmap around that. Not everything is going to be joined up perfectly in the first 6 months, but be able to have a well-articulated map to be able to produce that is absolutely key. And I guess the second point around that is probably, I think what we first saw in the market was systems starting to be created to fill needs. Then we've gone back to a habit now of systems trying to do a little bit of everything. And now we're seeing probably over the last 2 years a bit of a modular approach. So you get quoted on a core system and you've got to pay for A, B, C, and D. So I think being really clear about what you want as non-negotiables, what you have a long-term strategy for in terms of talent, which Kelly mentioned. I mean, that's a really saturated market at the moment with people going out there buying systems that purely for talent management and development opportunities. And ironically, then learning becomes a secondary element to that. People want a job and they want progression. Sometimes the runner-up prize is training. Actually, people want to get their experiential learning through a new role, and absolutely, you don't have to go far to know that probably is the most effective way. So you're trying to create an ecosystem that's not learning first, it's development first, and learning is part of that. And absolutely, that should inform some of the work that you do when bringing in a system like this.
Amazing. Thanks very much, Seb. So just so everyone on the call knows, the ebook that I mentioned earlier, we have compiled in there a list of really helpful questions and some resources specifically on this point, actually, to really help you narrow down your search across topics that are on the slide there, as well as tracking, admin capabilities, pricing, scalability, etc. Thanks very much, Kelly. So once we're kind of on this journey, right? We've defined what we want, and now really we're looking to build a business case, or at least we've had a business case approved, and organizational stakeholders have been engaged. We're now looking at finding the right partner. So this is really where things start to get quite exciting, I think, where we're kind of down to maybe a longer list or a shorter list. So again, Ali, I'll come to you first here. I think, given that you've gone through this process recently, like, how did you shortlist potential learning platform partners?
Very 2020 of me to be on mute. Sorry, everybody.
Unbelievable. Five pounds in the jar. Yeah.
So, in preparation for coming today, I did a little Google search and I put in which LMS should I choose. The number of responses, right? Guess how many? 3,350,000,000 searches that brought up for me. That's quite overwhelming, right? It's quite overwhelming, but proof that you're in the right place because lots of other people are interested in it as well. So we'll look at the positive. So I think to begin with, it's a mix of doing your research. Yes, the most popular, and yes, the industry recommendations, but I also used kind of LinkedIn recommendations, and I reached out to my network to kind of minimize the number. Although I will say you must start with your deal breakers. You have to put together the list because you'll get wowed. You'll go, oh my gosh, that's really nice. and you'll get pulled away from the key objectives. So with that in mind, you have to be ruthless because it will come back and, trip you up further down the line if you don't really stick to your guns about what the business needs. Of course, it's important to know which other brands and which clients trust them already, but your deal breakers going in, I feel like then it does become about what the platform does look like functionality. And we always must consider the user, not us, not the person uploading the content, but how easy is it for the user? The user journey on the platform for me was integral. It has to be so simple for people. I can't say, well, you need to search there and there and there and then put in this. It has to be plain and simple. For me, pricing transparency is it is really important. When this is my experience, so forgive me if this isn't others, that sometimes with some providers there can be an unwillingness to talk about the price until they know they're with the finance director. It doesn't work like that in the back end for us. We need to know what we're dealing with up front. So being transparent about that, I think, also shows a strength of a company. And something that was really important to me when I was going through my list of what it must do, and my brain was getting sparked by what I wasn't expecting. Brilliant. So I'd use that and I'd go, oh, and then can this, that, and the other. And for me, it was really important. And the providers stood out for me who were honest about yes or no.
Mm-hmm.
It's a personal vibe. Of course, personality is important as well, but you should be able to ask a question that perhaps the answer is, well, yes, but not quite, or you do it this way. It shouldn't be an automatic yes, yes, yes to everything, because it's got to be adaptable to your business, which will probably be different to the next person that they talk to. So for me, that honesty, yes, we always find a way to make it work, but just that you can tell who really trust their systems and they're not trying to sell it. They're comfortable that they're confident in its ability. So for me, that process is what we used.
Awesome. And I know you mentioned you touched on earlier, you kind of one of your takeaways, or one of the things you might have done differently would be to involve maybe more kind of senior stakeholders, maybe not even in learning, but just across the business. Like what was the team involved as you were reviewing vendors? Was it quite learning and HR specific, or did you kind of pull in other people to some of these discussions?
It was learning and people systems, because that was our deal breaker, the integration. And I also think as well, it's essential to get your administrators on the call to see the platform first. They're the people who are going to be working with it every single day of the week. You need their eye, their systems vision, as well as just thinking about how much it costs. And the other thing that I would recommend everyone to do, which kind of stood out for me, is to think about the future offering of the LMS provider, or insert your
insert your acronym here. Yeah.
What's happening now, but what's the vision for the future? Like our question, what does your AI offering look like? So no, and like I said before, the answer might not be, well, we've got a fully formed functionality on that right now, but no, you need to know that they're on it, that they're on a development, that it isn't a one hit with this isn't our offering and that is it. It's a constant journey, because then you'll feel like, okay, well, I can collaborate here. I know that their vision, the LMS provider's vision is the same as mine.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And Seb, on this kind of point, I know you procured a number of systems, learning and other in your role at Vitality, and obviously previously, like during those processes, do you have any kind of tips as to red flags to look out for, or I don't know what the opposite of a red flag might be, but something that kind of would pique your interest in a really positive way during this process?
A green flag.
Is it green flag?
Are we saying green flag? I don't know if I'm happy with green flag. I want to be honest with you.
We're all about the lingo here.
Yeah.
I mean, again, financial services, right or wrongly, it's all very closely controlled. So when you're going through renewal, you have to bring in so many different providers to come in on RFP processes, really outline everything you want from it. So you get a sense after seeing about probably 50 providers every year of some pretty early warning signs, to be honest with you. So I think a couple really that stick out. I think number one is transparent pricing, which is a real rarity. A lot of times you'll come in and they'll be very reluctant to provide you with approximate costings, whereas we all know that budgets are limited. So absolutely, there's such a wild variance in the cost of these things. I know it seems rude and a little bit counterintuitive. You've got to kind of get down to brass taxes pretty quickly about cost, number one. I think number two, and I think this is what Ali was alluding to, is the kind of future state of the product. A lot of these NXP providers are operating just like a normal software business. So they have roadmaps and deployments. So those iterations that you can see over the next year, some of them will give them to you for free, which is amazing, because you can almost manage it as a product and go back to your stakeholders and say, there's new functionality here, that's great. Some of them will launch new products and then they'll charge you, which again is a little bit of a red flag, because you then get into this increased reliance being further into the system, which actually makes it harder to depart from it at renewal. So that's a bit of a red flag. I think number 3, known integrations with some slightly bigger providers. So for example, our LXP has integration with Go1, which is incredibly beneficial from an extent that you don't have to manually go over and upload this content, or people don't necessarily have to leave our LXP to get Go1 content. It's all in there. So that user experience is preserved, and you know there's just less administrative work for you to do at the back end. So that adds to the credibility, certainly. I think having an understanding of the administrative burden that's put on the team, I absolutely subscribe to Ali's sentiment that end users are really important. But if you're working at scale and you're dealing with sort of 20,000 people, the administrative work that needs to go on from the learning development team in the background can become significant, incredibly significant. And if that's problematic and it's manual, that's when you've got a real problem. So I think you're looking for, I would always expand AI to automation. And we're kind of saying on your roadmap here, how difficult is it to set up an audience really quickly? How difficult is it to report on it? How difficult is it to get content out there? Because that's all the stuff that's going to take time. People will complete the learning, absolutely. But from the moment that, putting it in a nice way, that a grenade goes off and we have to turn something around really quickly, the reliance is going to be on your team to get it out there. That administrative burden is really good to understand, but a lot of salespeople will come and show you the glossy front end. They won't show you what's on the bonnet, and that's equally important.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Seb. I must say I'm very happy with the Go1 plug there.
Yeah, pay me later.
Yeah.
That was a green flag. That was a green flag.
Yeah. I know. So I think we've heard there from Seb, Ali, around kind of some red and green flags and various other colors. But really, when it comes to kind of making a decision, right? Like we've gone through that finding the right partner phase where we're shortlisting. But if you were going to summarize, Ali, kind of 1 or 2 key factors that really made you go with your platform partner of choice, like would you be able to kind of share what those would be?
Breadth of offering, topics wise. I've got a huge, it needs to not be a specialist for me. I need to be fully robust in various areas. And I needed to have that customer service feel for me to connect with that person. Like I said, I'd got my list. I had to have a tick in all the tick boxes. Yeah, the thing for me that was useful in terms of selling and gaining buy-in was being able to advertise my sessions and cultural stuff, as well as learning and development and compliance through it as well, which allowed me to make the cultural shift to embrace it. So those are my kind of the things that eventually was the fairy dust that made me say, yes, please, that one.
So if we move on then to kind of implementing, if Ali's got ticks in all the required boxes, obviously the kind of next key stage, right, in the journey is going to be implementing the LMS across the organization or the group in question. So like this stage is obviously really critical in setting your organization up for long-term success while partnering with this LMS or LXP. So Ali, slightly trickier question potentially, this one, like in a sentence, tough, how would you summarize your experience that you've recently gone through in implementing a learning platform?
That's a big question. In a sentence.
In a sentence.
I'm actually going to share with you one of my favorite quotes to summarize this, by Art Williams, which is, I'm not telling you it's going to be easy, I'm telling you it's going to be worth it. It absolutely was. It absolutely was. In terms of the implementation, my advice, gosh, if I could go back again, and I think Seb touched on this earlier, is plan for enough time before launch to get the platform in a decent state. We soft launched because of turnaround time, which I'm sure was our fault and a financial reason rather than anything to do with our platform provider, but we gave ourselves a deadline. And that meant that we had to launch, soft launch, just with compliance on the platform. And it really set us back because everybody in the business then saw it just as a compliance platform. We had to do it that way. It wasn't a choice. But my advice to you would be to get your overview offering, get developed content, pique their interest, start with a campaign that is relevant to your company at that moment of first engagement, because I feel like I was backpedaling for 6 months trying to get people, oh, we'll go back on there now, because then we did a significant upload of content. So that for me, I would say to you, fight to get plenty of time before the launch, as much time as possible to populate the site.
Seb, do you kind of echo a similar sentiment around the implementation process, or is your experience slightly different?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, again, it's different. It's different per business, which I think is the nuance here. I think the biggest lesson is around planning your reporting. So you know you're going to go into the room, you might do your pitch, and someone's going to cut you a check, and then you'll be all happy. We'll go off and the system, and then there'll be a big launch, and everyone will be feeling elated, and it's great. And there's loads of hard work that's gone in the background, but maybe 3 or 4 months after that, you know, you get a knock on the door, and it's, well, what did we pay for here, and what's it doing? So I think you should start with that moment at the beginning of your implementation. Say, what do we absolutely have to report on from day one? And then what's our data roadmap looking like? Because quite a lot of times people will talk engagement, for example. And we all know if you go to a senior stakeholder and say, isn't it great 1,000 people have used the platform? Rightfully, the question, the response to that question is so what? Like it doesn't make any difference to me. So what you've got to be able to do is set it up so you know that you've got the ability to pull the right data that you confirmed you were going to deliver as part of this investment, which is only going to add further credibility to your team as a commercial entity. But similarly, it's going to mean that if you go back and ask for money again, it shouldn't be that difficult. So you've got to be really clear about making sure that the pounds are having the right impact. But you should almost expect that knock on the door from whoever it is, FD, CEO, to say, what's that money done for us? And if you can turn around and answer with clarity and credibility in that moment, whatever the business case, you're going to be okay.
You know what's really interesting, Seb, is because I said I regretted launching with compliance. But because I launched with compliance, I got all that reporting down. You just said, so it's obviously a blend of the two.
Possibly, yeah. And compliance gets a bad name, but for someone who hasn't got that experience or they want to motivate the requirement for it, it's as simple as saying, well, if the regulator comes knocking, you won't be in a good position. And ironically, that can start as the motivation. I think it's just important that we all know that it's a very limited tool. You can only play that card once, and it's an entry point into further investment, not the end goal. I think that's kind of what we're all subscribing to here, really.
Awesome. So I think we both, Seb and Ali have really both helpfully kind of touched on this process, right, which is on the slide here, which is obviously kind of on the lips of everyone in L&D and HR across global teams, but it's really around kind of reviewing and reporting on the achievements or the impact really of the new LMS or LXP. So let's talk a little bit about the importance of data and reporting and the impact that it can have on getting the most out of learning programs. So we know that 98% of learning and development teams say that improving their analytical skills is a priority, and making the most of your LMS's reporting and analytics features is obviously a fantastic way to improve impact, demonstrate impact, and optimize learning experience. So Seb, before implementing your LMS, or before we kind of move to your new LMS, like how did you report on learning development impact, and how do you now track and measure that return on investment to present to leadership or to senior stakeholders, as you were just kind of alluding to?
I think in a previous life, I used to go back and we used to present what we thought were relatively impactful L&D sort of vanity metrics around kind of engagement. And don't get me wrong, I think the extent there's a place for those for some organisations, but I think when you realise that you're going quite often in front of an exec committee to present after like an IT team who are producing a 5-year outlook on return on investment and all the efficiency impacts, etc., 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 it's not going to make you look very good. So I think the reality is the first thing you've got to do is align your reporting to business strategy and the performance metrics around that. And I think once you do that and you orient it around it, you're not a disparate function going in and reporting on L&D. You're a function that's an enabler in a business that's there to support performance. I think if that's your departure point, you can come back and say, so here's how we've contributed to all those elements of performance. And some of the things that we've expanded into since that point is cross-skilling efficiencies, what that does in terms of our ability to be agile on the day when different demand comes into the organization, what that does in terms of efficiency, in terms of member experience, ability to answer those contacts, absolutely, ability to deal in kind of an omni-channel approach. And when we've deployed something here, how quickly can we respond to that need? And a lot of that's around business resilience. And I guess the final point is we have been really clear to say we're not trying to promote an increase in training. Training is a cost. So when you take people away from their job, they're not contributing to performance. So ironically, what we want to do is make people better at their jobs in a more efficient way. And the way you do that, ironically, is by driving your training minutes down. So how do you rationalize the cost versus the performance of that individual? And are we making sure that we're actually allocating those minutes, those precious minutes, in the right way possible against what is a challenge today? What is a skills deficit we have today? And what are we investing in that we're perceiving to be particularly relevant and sparse skills in the future? Because if we're not investing in those now, we're going to have to buy them in the future, and it's going to be bloody expensive. So you're starting to get into that conversation around growing your own timber, making sure that we're imparting that technical information to individuals in advance and cultivating those skills in advance of when they're going to be needed. Because the reality is, if you need them as an organization, it's a very high possibility that everyone else will too. And I think a lot of people have experienced that over the last 2 years.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Well, we've just kind of discussed one of the key topics that I know are on the mind of all the customers that I work with and learning and development and kind of more generally. And I'm really eager to discuss another one, actually, is I think our penultimate point of discussion for the session today. So at Go One, like, we truly believe that through a love of learning comes from building a culture of learning, and high performing organizations that create sustainable learning cultures tend to be more successful in areas such as revenue growth, talent, retention, and all of those kind of key drivers that organizations are really looking towards. So Ali, I'm interested in your take on this and how you have, or how you are beginning to embed a learning culture within your organization that is Oliver Agency, and any major success stories that you can share with us on that as a broader topic.
Lovely. Yeah, happy to. My journey towards becoming successful, starting on the journey, was to really focus on curating content on an area of the business that I knew was integral and had got the full lens of the senior stakeholders, and that was diversity, equity, and inclusion. One of our values, as well as learning, is inclusion, and we talk about it all the time. So I made a conscious effort the first time I could really dig into developing my content. I chose that subject to do it on. I've really provided lots of varied content in that subject, broken it down so that it's super easy for people to navigate. And because I'm not dictating their journey, but I'm saying this is important to us and the culture of our company, we're all on our own journey here. Please go in, dig into, find out about what you don't know about. And I think because I've done that with a subject that doesn't affect their day-to-day work, but it does affect everything else around them and the culture of the business. They've got more used to going to my platform to see it as development as opposed to learning, through providing them with the content that is interesting, makes sense, it's constantly talked about. So I think for me, that culture of learning started. I'm at the start. We will get better, but for me, and as part of onboarding, I share a pathway of content that I think everybody should have experienced to join our company, to understand our culture. So I do it from an onboarding right at the start of their journey, and then I break it down and compartmentalize so people only dip into what they want. Once they're there, yes, they start exploring, but to allow them the security of, I understand this, I'd like to learn more about that, and there it is for me on that subject, which is wonderful, and it's a really valuable subject to have done it on as well. But that's how I've managed to thus far achieve.
It's an ever ongoing process, right? And Kelly, within your role within Go One, again working across multiple partners within our partner ecosystem, do you have any tips that you see organizations often using to kind of launch learning within an organization in terms of this kind of building a culture of learning strategy as a key area of focus?
Yeah, I loved Ali's answer to that. So many things I could pick up on that, Ali. I love it. And I think when I look at learning and development more broadly, I think learning for a lot of people, just the word itself is quite a barrier. A lot of people, come from a history, whether that be through traditional education or not, where learning didn't necessarily become naturally to them. So this learning culture, I just feel like almost with learning and development, could we just get rid of the learning?
Oh, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, can we just call it development? Can we just call it, in this new age of AI and generative AI, can we just call it human development? Because that feels better to me. And I think that a lot of more people can resonate with that. And so to Ali's point, building a culture of development feels just more holistic, supportive, and makes people feel like they're more in control of that journey. And therefore, just by virtue of that, you're going to get more buy-in from people, typically from a psychological perspective. But if we're going to zoom out a little bit from the end user, it's obviously super important, but something that, again, I think we touched upon earlier from the implementation perspective, to successfully embed a development culture within your organization when you're launching a new development management system or development experience platform, I'm going to coin it, you must make sure that platform is ready for public consumption, right? Because I've seen a number of times when a platform gets launched and there are some glitches in the matrix, right? And the learners, or we can't call them learners, can we? Have to think that one through. But the humans who are utilizing those platforms, if they have a bad experience, typically that's just going to put them off and creates far more barriers. So I'd say test, make sure that implementation is absolutely on point where it needs to be, and you're comfortable and confident that the development content that you have on there is going to be engaging the right way for your learner audience, which of course will vary from organization to organization. But then moving aside from that, middle management buy-in, in my experience, is extremely important. To Seb's point earlier, when you're dealing with maybe 20,000 learners in an organization, it's very difficult from an L&D perspective to manage that at scale and be able to drive that engagement. And you've got the senior stakeholders who are interested, frankly, usually in the commercial element and the return on investment. But if you can get the middle management buy-in, and that ties back into your point earlier, Ali, in relation to when you're on that procurement journey, that you bring those people in and get those stakeholders invested in the platform from an early stage, they are then typically the drivers for the engagement for the end user. So I think the L&D function gets quite a challenging time of it sometimes when they're expected to drive all of this engagement, etc. But the middle management are typically actually really good at doing that, and where it works well, you see engagement levels far higher typically than those where the middle management aren't bought in. George, I'm going to put this back on you just really quickly as well, because something that I know that we do well here, really well, is creating sort of learning series. And I'm thinking about our Love of Learning series. And I wondered whether you could talk to that a little bit as to how we've implemented that with some of our customers and how you've seen that help L&D functions actually drive that engagement and give them sort of a point of focus moving through, say, the first year of implementing a platform.
Yeah, I think the thing that we really help to drive organizations with on those kind of themes and pathways is we're really good at creating kind of assets and resources that align various months to content that exists within GoOne's Content Hub. So this year we've had our and last year I think we probably kicked that off. We had our 2022 and 2023 months of learning campaign, and within each of those we had 2 or 3 playlists for each month that are really there to support growing and sometimes under-resourced L&D teams kind of pick up and use resources that GoOne can create to just begin to drive and embed some of this culture of habitual learning that we really want to encourage, and our clients to adopt, and obviously our clients want to adopt those as well. Something that I'm really looking forward to, actually, which leads us really nicely onto the next slide, if we've hopefully got time before we wrap up relatively quickly, is around the future of learning. So in 2024, GoOne's content calendar is really going to be focused in on, I think it's 4 or 5 key skills that the World Economic Forum have identified as of major importance over the coming handful of years. And so we're going to be aligning content to those themes. So before we begin the Q&A, if we have any in the chat, and again, I'm conscious of time, I'm really interested in kind of getting each of your thoughts, maybe in 1 or 2 or maybe 3 words at max, as to your views on the future of learning and where you think learning might be heading in 2024.
I'll kick off.
Let's do it.
I can't do it in 3 words. I agree with Kelly. Learning needs to not feel like learning. Users just need to be interested in the content. And then 1 word, AI, and everything that comes with it.
What she said.
that's in 3 words. Yeah, that's 10 out of 10.
I'll go with 2, hyper-personalized.
Love it. Amazing. Well, I don't know if we've got any questions in the chat, but I know that we are slightly over time, so I'll wrap up there. Thank you everyone for joining today and for contributions in the chat if there have been any. Kelly, Ali, and Seb, thank you so much for your time and for sharing so much valuable knowledge, experience, and just information with everyone that's joined today. That's been awesome. We've covered so much ground. A couple of the key takeaways from me, like Ali, the alignment of company values to learning is crucial. Seb touching on a number of times, learning and development enabling and contributing to performance and development as key organizational drivers, and Kelly radically suggesting that we drop the L from L&D, which is just an excellent note for us to end on and to think about as we move into the rest of our days and our weeks. Finally, we do have our ebook available, which the information and the link of that will be shared, I'm sure, with you all afterwards. So yeah, that is us for today. Thank you so much for joining, and until next time.
Thanks so much. Bye.